right, good morning, everybody. My name's Dave Lynch. I'm the city manager here in Newton Falls, Ohio. Welcome to our morning briefing regarding the COVID-19 events taking place here in Newton Falls. As I say every morning, the governor has these pressers that he has not every day of the week, but they're usually at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then also the president is occasionally going out on the air, although the task force is winding down. And as we get through these troubled waters of the COVID-19, we are talking about what's happening locally on a local basis here in Newton Falls. One thing I wanted to mention today is it's with sadness that I must report that the July 4th committee had a very big meeting on Friday night, and they took a vote. And then yesterday they released a post indicating that the July 4th activities in Newton Falls have been scrubbed until next year. In addition to that, they're looking at some other possible alternatives, but it looks like a scrub. Who knows? Things might change, that there's a new date that ends up emanating from the July 4th committee. But my general sense of what I'm getting from them and from what I saw posted was that the parade and the fireworks and the bike show, as well as the car show, are put off at least until next year. And maybe the bike show will come back with a date later this year yet. Anyways, keep an eye on the post from Carol Kendall and the July 4th committee. And it's really not that much of a surprise. Communities all over Ohio have scrubbed 4th of July activities. And I know a lot of people are just busted at the seams. The baseball people are just, I must get a call at least once a week from baseball people saying, when is the first pitch going to occur? And the answer is we really don't know right now. Well, speaking of learning things, I've been learning a lot by getting some postings from one of our citizens, Brian Kropp, who also has his own Facebook page. We'll talk about it when he comes on live in just a moment. But he sent me a number of videos, very interesting also, from a guy named Jack Windsor, who has really tapped into a different source, different perspective of information than you're necessarily getting officially from the state of Ohio. And in addition to that, he's had some folks on with some other information. As you know, we had just a couple weeks ago, Nino Vitale, a state representative who has a contrasting viewpoint as to how we ought to be proceeding with the COVID-19. So I thought, well, what better way to really educate people on this other source, other perspective on the COVID-19 than to talk to Brian Kropp directly. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning, Dave. How are you doing? I'm doing fantastic.
Great. Thanks for coming in. Well,
my pleasure.
You know, Representative Vitale, Jack Windsor, I really want people to understand that there's another way of looking at this, and maybe that there's another approach in terms of how we really should be handling this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, with everything that's been going on, we've been listening to all the press conferences, or a lot of the press conferences since they started, since this whole thing happened, kind of happened to us starting in March, when we really started to feel the effects, when the governor, made the announcement that he declared an emergency. The beginning of March was March 9th. And then, the stay-at-home orders and the business closures, we've all been directly affected. But at first, I think a lot of us, myself included, my wife included, and a lot of people kind of just agreed and understood that we needed to kind of listen to our leadership and listen to what they had to say, because we really didn't know anything. We didn't really have a whole lot of information. This was so new. As everyone's aware, this is the novel coronavirus, so it was something that was new. It came out of China, and we didn't have any information about it at the time, no data. So, we just kind of, we just listened to what we were told and kind of fell in line and kind of did that kind of stuff. But then as time went on, over the last couple months, especially, we've had, mountains of data. And like I said, since we've been, my wife and I have been directly affected, we've been unable to work. We've been unable to do, what we do, kind of operate and do our job, because we rely on, a lot of different things that have been basically overnight criminalized. Our governor and the orders, the sweeping orders and sweeping changes, have affected a lot of businesses, and our businesses in particular, like I said, overnight have been criminalized, meaning, if we go out and do our job or do what we earn a living doing, we could be charged, we could be fined and jailed even. It all depends on the enforcement and who decides to enforce those rules. even though they're actually not laws, they're just an order. But those kind of things are very real. So over the last couple of months, because I've had ample time, I've spent a lot of time, digging through information, finding different sources of information, because as a lot of people know, the local sources are news stations, are national news. A lot of those come from the same source, which I don't think a lot of people know, that, there's several large corporations that own a lot of the news stations, in bulk. So even though we have several, local news stations here, a lot of those are owned by the same companies, and they get their information in the same place.
Yeah,
so
Brian,
you're not
I'm going to try to break this up into sound bites if I can a little bit.
Of course.
Brian, what would you say is the biggest piece of disinformation or wrong information that it looks like we've been getting?
Honestly, I believe it's widespread fear, not based on actual data and numbers from multiple sources. That's what I would say is the biggest kind of misnomer about what's going on, is that we've learned over the last several months that, this has been extremely disproportionately affecting, a one particular group of people. And that's going to be the elderly and people with underlying health conditions. And then if those cross, if you're an elderly person with underlying health conditions, we've seen, this has been devastating to long-term care facilities, particularly in Ohio and a lot of states. So that would be the thing that I think is probably the biggest misnomer, is that in the state of Ohio, and there's anybody can get on the Ohio coronavirus dashboard. There's actually, they put that together, and they've been tracking data, tracking information. But that's the biggest, I think, overwhelming thing to me, is that in the state of Ohio, as a matter of fact, no one under the age of 20 has actually died from coronavirus. And also, I would say another misunderstanding is that coronavirus, I don't think a lot of people know this either, is that coronavirus is actually, it's two parts. So COVID-19 is actually the disease, and there's actually a name for the virus. The virus is called SARS-CoV-2. So there's actually a name for the virus and a name for the disease. So a lot of us were, I was around in the 80s and 90s, and people are familiar with the AIDS virus, the AIDS disease, which HIV was the virus. So kind of the same mindset. I don't think a lot of people even realize that, because the media has just portrayed it, and everybody just calls it COVID-19. That's actually the disease that develops from the virus SARS-CoV-2. So even little stuff like that people aren't even aware of, because of the media, because of, just the repetition of certain phrases, people are unaware. So young people have not been as affected by this. I think in the state of Ohio, actually, 93% of all the deaths in Ohio have been 60 and over. And that data you can see there's from multiple states, the state of New York, multiple countries, Italy, Spain, these countries all are showing the same thing. It's very disproportionately affecting
Brian,
the elderly.
And listening to what Nino Vitale had to say, and also what Jack Windsor has been saying, and to some extent, sort of restating what you've been talking about, the message that I've been hearing is this: the disease is problematic for somewhat limited group, and as a result of that, our shutting down the way we have, the pain we've caused, the destruction to the economy, the data shows unnecessary. In fact, that we could have operated in a way that really saves the economy without all these shutdowns, because the data demonstrates that really wasn't necessary. Is that kind of a way of reinterpreting what you're seeing and hearing?
Absolutely. That's 100% what I've been seeing and what I've been believing now for the last, like I said, just based on information and data, and then the sources, like you mentioned. Mr. Windsor has been a breath of fresh air from a journalistic standpoint. I kind of dive into what he's been talking about and the information that he's been sharing. He actually is one of the journalists, one of the reporters that has actually been able to ask questions at the press conferences to the governor directly, and to Dr. Acton directly, and to the lieutenant governor, and has been, like I said, a breath of fresh air because of the questions. He asks genuine, rational, unemotional, hard questions. And unfortunately, if you've watched the press conferences, you've probably seen the governor and Dr. Acton kind of dance around and not actually directly answer a lot of these questions, because their policy at this point is no longer based on the information. It seems like the shutdown and lockdown was completely unnecessary. And again, I very early on, and I've been very fortunate to be able to have conversations with yourself, conversations with the mayor, and spoken about these kind of things. And at the very beginning of this, at the onset, to be perfectly honest, I was a very strong believer that we needed to lock everything down and everybody needed to stay away from each other, because we didn't know. We were all scared. We were all fearful, and that's what our leadership told us. But like I said, as time went on, I actually, the mayor, I actually had a conversation with him about it, and the basketball hoops. There was an issue with the basketball hoops. I don't know if people would remember seeing a conversation.
How can we forget?
You're right, but at the time, I was very staunchly in support of, just everybody stay home, keep your kids locked away. We didn't want anybody to catch this. We were all scared. But as time went on, I learned, and my position has changed based on what I've seen and the information I have and the access to those kind of things. It just doesn't make any sense, David.
Yeah,
it really
Brian,
doesn't. We should have protected our elderly in the long-term care facilities. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to ask you is, our producer, Tom, has preloaded some graphics in our video system. So what charts do you want us to bring up? Because I'd like you to be able to refer to some of these things.
I would like to take a look at. I sent Tom the overview of the Ohio Department of Health coronavirus dashboard. So I think that's probably a really good source, a good place to start to kind of get an overview of where we are currently.
Good. It's on your screen right now. And tell people how they navigate this in the educated way that you do.
So just looking at this, you're looking at a heat map of the state of Ohio to show where cases essentially have flared up. And you're also seeing these these blue bar graphs on your right-hand side there that look very scary, because those bars are actually cumulative, meaning it's no matter how long this goes on, those bars are just going to continue to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because they're just a total. They're essentially just a total of all the information that we've gathered. And what you'll see that I think is very telling, the next slide, I think Tom also has the mortality metrics, I think is the next, would be the next thing to take a look at.
Yeah, I think we have it on the screen right now.
Okay, so this is where I started to notice that something that was really concerning to me. If you can see the age range, I'm not sure if you can see the age range there or not. So you've got the age ranges, as I mentioned, the 0 to 19 age range. There's been 0 deaths in the state of Ohio out of the 1,600 deaths in the state. And then you can see the extremely disproportionate number of deaths from 60 years old and over, particularly the 70 to 80 group. We're talking over almost 80% of all the deaths in Ohio, which any death is a tragic death. It's unexpected or accidental, or, all deaths are tragic. But these deaths could have been prevented, I think. We didn't do our due diligence and take care of these long-term care facilities. We knew this information, that it was affecting disproportionately the elderly community, all the way back in January. Dr. Acton was doing press conferences and interviews talking about how they already knew that these things were affecting the elderly and that kind of group. And our long-term care facilities, as of April 15th of this year, have accounted for almost 70% of all the deaths in Ohio, and that's since April 15th. And that data is also on here in the mortality metrics for the long-term care facilities. You're talking 70% of the fatalities based on this are in long-term care facilities, which are controlled and handled by our health director, the state health director, Amy Acton. So they knew these things, and I don't know why they didn't take more care of those situations to protect the elderly, protect those populations. But that's where a lot of this is coming from. And in a state with 11.7 million people, you've got 1,600 deaths, which is, like I said, all deaths are bad. No unexpected accidental deaths are tragic. But we're talking 1,600 people in a state of 11.5 million or 11.7 million people. On average, 340 people die every day in the state of Ohio of all causes. This isn't overwhelming. This was. And I'll be perfectly honest, I know people have said, this isn't the flu, but the numbers are actually very, very close to a bad flu season.
Yeah. Well, Tom, also some of the data out of Sweden, which is a real-life example of not a complete shutdown, are showing they've been as, if not more effective than what we're doing.
Absolutely. Their health director, his name is Anders Tengel, I believe. He's been interviewed several times. And he's one of the people that instituted their policies. And no, they did not lock down. They didn't shut down. People practice social distancing or physical. I don't even like the term social distancing. It should be physical distancing, like Eric Thompson mentioned.
Yeah.
Physical distancing, just so you don't spread droplets and that kind of stuff, which I understand. But they didn't shut down businesses. They didn't shut down schools, and they are basically going to reach herd immunity. Or they expect to reach herd immunity, and their cases and their everything else has been just dropping consistently. Because viruses need viable hosts. Viruses aren't things that can just continue to go on and on and on and on and on. That's why we have a flu season. That's why we have things like that, because viruses need viable hosts. Once you reach herd immunity, there's only two ways to actually stop a virus or end a virus, and that's herd immunity through natural herd immunity, just by spreading the virus around or by immunizations. That's what vaccines do. Vaccines essentially create herd immunity. So anybody that's talking about this vaccine coming out, all they're talking about doing is trying to get to herd immunity.
Yeah, Brian, a pet peeve of mine it has been this concept of ventilators. And while Governor Cuomo was saying that people will die because we don't have enough ventilators,
right.
My conversation with Kevin Harris last week told me that maybe the opposite is true. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for ventilators in the medical
right.
community, but am I off base in this reassessment I'm doing after I talked to Kevin Harris last week?
No, and I'll tell you what, again, like as I said, and I'll clarify because I know we've been kind of going through information and numbers, and I'm not a doctor. Obviously, I think people know I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist. But I'm curious and I like to learn, and that's why I've gotten to the point where I am, because this is what I've spent my time doing. And in doing so, and I listened to the interview with Kevin, and it was a very detailed report. And I've actually found reports from an article coming from Italy that they did actual tests. They did after they passed away. I'm losing a word here. They did autopsies. Sorry, they did autopsies on, I believe it was 70 cases, people that have passed away from COVID. And what they found was that and this hasn't been confirmed, so this is just a report that kind of goes along with what Kevin was talking about as far as being up and moving around and what it was doing to his lungs. They're starting to see that what this virus is actually doing is causing thrombosis, which is causing like an inflammation in the lungs. And that's really what's happened. That's why these ventilators, people are struggling on these ventilators, because they're ventilating lungs and bringing in oxygen, but the lungs aren't able to actually spread the oxygen through the body. I think you heard a couple of videos that I sent you from Jack Windsor.
Sure. Yeah.
He spoke with a nurse who talked about oxygen levels. So this is another thing that people can verify and look up themselves. People that have had coronavirus or come down with COVID actually have had very, very low oxygen levels in their blood, which is very unusual. Most people walk around anywhere from 92 to 95% oxygenation in their blood or higher. Anywhere below that, you could go into, you'd be very sick, or you wouldn't be up walking around. You wouldn't be getting enough oxygen in your body. People have been walking into hospitals with coronavirus that have had this virus that have actually had oxygen levels all the way in the 50%, which typically these people wouldn't even be conscious. But they're up walking around talking just like you and I are right now. So that's one of the things. It's stopping the oxygen getting to the body.
Ryan, so I want to talk about. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to get into nursing homes, and the reason is one of the most distressing things that I've been hearing about is loved ones that can't get doctors in nursing homes to administer hydroxychloroquine, and the distress that these loved ones have regarding the senior citizen family member that's isolated, cut off, and maybe not getting advisable treatment. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of examples, honestly. Here in Ohio, like I said, the long-term care facilities and the deaths and stuff in the long-term care facilities have been tragic. The numbers, but yes, I have heard those reports, and I've seen a lot of things from New York in particular. Governor Cuomo in New York has, again, these are things that people can, I encourage people to kind of look these things up and kind of do a little bit of searching and studying for themselves. But Governor Cuomo actually sent COVID positive patients to long-term care facilities early on. And New York, as most people know, New York is probably the epicenter for this virus and where it's happened. Over a third of the total deaths in all of the country have been in New York, and basically New York City alone. And of those, again, about 80% of those, I believe, are like 65, 70 and over. I think I had Tom.
Well, Brian, why can't the loved ones get the doctors to administer the hydroxychloroquine? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, the things that I've read and the things that I've heard, Jack Windsor's talked about this, is he's interviewed people that have directly been affected by this. They believe that because the governors haven't allowed these long-term care facilities to get access to the hydroxychloroquine, the pharmacists aren't prescribing it. They won't allow those things to be out. Now, the rumor is, and I can't confirm this, that hydroxychloroquine's been around for a long time. It's been a drug that's been used, and it's very inexpensive.
Right.
I believe
And
like
no side
$13.
effects, virtually no side effects.
Correct. And there's been, I think what we've seen in the news, what we've seen in articles is that there's been conflicting reports on the efficacy and how well it actually works. You'll see some people that, some reports that say that it works 100%, like people are seeing amazing results from it. And then you'll see some other national news that say, there's nothing confirmed. So it's hard to tell sometimes, who's right and what side to believe.
Yeah, but Brian, here's my philosophy. What have you got to lose? If a doctor wants to administer to a family, what have you got to lose?
Yeah, and that's what the families, and I think that's what a lot of people, they're willing to try anything at this point because these people, they want to see something done. They just can't believe that their elderly loved ones or someone that's being cared for is just basically being left isolated, alone, and untreated, which is, it's a crime, honestly. I mean, that's what I mean, but we're seeing instances of this all over the state, and it's unfortunate. It's not even just the elderly. We're seeing in long-term care facilities, but I've seen reports of young children around the country who've had issues or who've been terminal, and parents have not been able to see them, or only one parent at a time for a terminally ill child because of the concerns of coronavirus. It's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
Well, plus, human contact in those intimate circumstances of moms and dads and children, it has a healing effect to be able to be around those people.
Oh, 100%. We're human. We know how important, for our health, just our mental and emotional health, we know how important physical contact is. Hugging, kissing, telling people that you love them, being able to look them in the eye and having a conversation, laughing, these things all help us, mentally, emotionally. And I talked to Mayor Klein, and I'm really glad that at the last council meeting he brought this up and kind of talked to the public about this. But immunity, your natural immunity, we don't talk about this enough, and I'm really displeased with how our Dr. Acton, our health director, and our governor have really failed to do their due diligence and let the public know that our natural immunity is probably the best defense we could ever have against this virus or any other virus at any other time. And we don't stress that enough. We talk about, putting on a mask that's, going to reduce your oxygen levels, your oxygen intake, and staying away from people and washing their hands and stuff like that. But we don't talk about getting plenty of rest. We don't talk about, going to bed at the same time every night, getting up at the same time, and eating properly, not eating processed foods, not eating refined sugars, reading, doing yoga, meditation, exercising, getting fresh air, having physical contact, interacting with people, that kind of stuff. How amazing these things are for our natural immunity to build them up. Honestly, we've, as a species, have made it for a really long time, and there's been a lot of every day there's viruses all around us, and we all know this. But if you have a good natural immunity, chances are you're going to be okay. We've got this virus has a 98 or 99% survival rate, and the numbers show that. I mean, this isn't just something that we're speculating on now. We see this, and this is worldwide. Almost 200 countries, we're seeing the data is pretty much the same all around the world.
Brian, we're going to wrap up now, but how do people stay connected with you and information you've got to present?
Well, as you mentioned, and as we've kind of talked about before, I started a group here in town called Newton Falls X. I really wanted to have a place to have conversations and long-form discussions, kind of like we're having now. And you and I don't always agree or talk about, don't always see things the same way, but we can have conversations. We can talk. I can inform you, you can inform me, and we learn and grow, and we all get better. So I kind of created the group to do just that. I wanted to have a place where we could have long-form discussions, conversations. I could help inform my fellow residents here in town. I love town. I've been here 10 years. I love it here. We have so many positive things here in town and so many good people, and I really do believe genuinely that the collective really wants what's best for our town. I think we have a lot to offer. So I started the group to kind of offer that and give people a place to do that where they could express themselves, speak out, speak intelligently. Like I said, we don't always disagree. If you say something or post something or make a remark, if it's something that I disagree with, I'm going to comment on it. I'll say how I feel. We can have a conversation. And I've gotten a lot of amazing feedback from people in the community who really appreciate it. And I think the group we're over 700 people right now in the group. It's only been around for a couple months. And most of it's probably 80% of the people in it are directly from the village. And I get messages privately constantly from people, appreciating what they're reading and things that they didn't know about or didn't see. It just gives people a place to kind of speak their mind and know that they're going to be heard. And I know people talk about how I'm very outspoken, and I'll talk to anybody. I'll have a conversation and a discussion with anybody. And I love to learn, and I want to grow, and I hope other people will kind of do the same thing and follow that lead.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, always count to 10, Brian. That's my rule.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Brian. All your information's been displayed all over the place during this interview today. Thanks for coming on. Keep the fires burning, and I'm sure we'll be communicating again as hopefully we emerge. Thanks a lot, Brian, and good health to you and your family.
I'll see you at the meeting tonight, David. Have a great day.
Okay. All right, that was Brian Kropp, and he did mention the idea of number of subscribers, and I'm glad he brought that up because we are now streaming live only on YouTube. Any live streaming we do for the city will not be on Facebook, will only be on YouTube, and of course, we'll show it on cable channel 1023, Spectrum channel 1023, and there are a couple reasons for streaming on YouTube exclusively, and that is that we want to drive up the number of subscribers, plus our connectivity issues with Facebook are still delicate. We're not exactly sure what the reason for that is, but they are still somewhat delicate. And before we adjourn this morning, I want to make sure I mention something. I got a call from Daniel Hung, and his family operates the Main Moon Restaurant. They were on last week telling us about how they're dealing with COVID-19, and their coupons expire at the end of this month. How about that for a shameless specific plug? The coupons that all of you have got in your hands right now for the Main Moon expire and are good through the end of the month of May. So if it says otherwise, disregard. They will honor them through the end of the month of May. So I'm expecting a lot of chop suey and egg foo young and egg rolls to be flying out the door now at the Main Moon. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of another one of our morning briefings. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Remember that you're seeing us on YouTube because we are not live streaming on Facebook, just on YouTube. And, of course, you can catch us on channel 1023 Spectrum. All of the city's live streaming activities will now be on YouTube exclusively. And by the way, if you can click on Facebook, it's just another click away to get on YouTube. So it is a movement of your index finger is actually the only change that we've made. Well, stay in prayer, folks. We're not out of this yet. We don't even know if there's going to be school in the fall. I got a feeling there is going to be. I'm hopeful. We'll plan our July 4th activities in a more vigorous way for next year. But everybody be safe, be in prayer with our Heavenly Father. And as I mentioned at the end, God bless America and God bless the city of Newton Falls.